So I have been on quite a Nintendo 64 kick recently because, I mean, it's an awesome system. I just wrote the Art of N64 Wrestling Games book, featuring every wrestling game released in every region, plus various hack projects, plus interviews with wrestlers that were featured in these games, link in the description box down below. But I'm not here to shill my book today. I'm not here to talk about it too much, because I'm here to talk about something that every Nintendo 64 owner needs. If you own one of these N64s, you need to buy this. Now, this product has been available for quite a while, but I actually bought something else with this product to really open up the Nintendo 64 library and really break the limits of what you think your N64 can actually do. So today we're going to be talking about two different products that work together that really open up your Nintendo 64. The first product is, of course, the EverDrive. This is the EverDrive X5. Now, you might be wondering, well, what is an EverDrive system? You've probably heard about them before, and if you're a diehard retro gamer, you're probably well aware of these. Well, an EverDrive is essentially an FPGA cartridge that will allow you to play any Nintendo 64 game on your Nintendo 64 exactly the way that it was intended to run. So you're not going to get some of the compatibility issues that you have with things like emulation, but you're also not going to be able to do some of the fun things that emulation can do, such as upscale things. You basically add a micro SD card to this, and now you have access to the entire N64 library once you put your ROMs on there. Now, I purchased the EverDrive X5. Now, there is also an X7. I purchased this off Amazon for $129.99. It also did come with a nice little clamshell case, kind of reminiscent of a Genesis cartridge. But the main difference between the X5 and the X7 is the fact of really one major thing. The EverDrive will save games that have a battery backup to them. So a game like Super Mario 64 that saves to the cartridge itself, your EverDrive X5 and X7 will save to the cartridge. The only difference is with the X5, you have to reset your Nintendo 64 and then turn it off. With the X7, you could just simply turn off the system. That's just the way that it goes. But for me, you know, the X7 also has a development port on it as well. But I'm not really going to use that because, I mean, I'm not a hacker man or anything like that. So the X5 more than met my needs. But you need something else to go along with your EverDrive cartridge because you actually need the games to play on it. Now, you could simply just get a micro SD card, load your own games onto there, and go about your merry way. But I'm a lazy boy. I wanted something that was already preloaded. And I actually found a micro SD card specifically designed for an EverDrive system available on Amazon as well. And it was about $35, I believe. I will also have a link to this in the description box down below. But this said that it was preloaded with all the N64 games, plus a whole lot more. So in conjunction, I picked up these two things, and I've been playing it on my N64, and let me tell you, you need to buy these things immediately. But if you don't want to take my word for it, let's take a look and see what this is actually capable of when you combine these two items together. Now, of course, the primary function of an EverDrive plus our preloaded micro SD card is to play Nintendo 64 games. Now, when you plug in your EverDrive into your Nintendo 64 that has this in there, the micro SD card, you get a series of menu options, and this is the Nintendo 64 option. All of these are preloaded minus the AA ROM thing. That is actually something that I added in. You might remember about a week or so ago, I took a look at removing anti-aliasing off of Nintendo 64 games. So these are my patched ROMs for that. But everything else comes preloaded on this micro SD card, which makes things great. And it's not just N64 games that they offered, but of course that's what we're going to look at first. So you basically just hit A to access the different menus. You can see here we have the Metacritic top 50 games. So, you know, these are games that all have a very high review score, probably some of the more popular games on the platform. You have USA games where you can go through alphabetically, and there's actually betas and prototypes added into this as well, which I think is super cool because, you know, some of these things such as, you know, beta versions of games, prototypes of games that never came out. Like, it's nice to have all of this stuff just to be able to check it out. You also have European ROMs, you have Japanese ROMs, you have worldwide, so basically different regions that got games. You have those specific ROMs. So it's very complete as far as the games you would expect to see. Now, as far as booting up a game is concerned, I don't know, we'll just choose a random game here, something easy to get in and out of, maybe a little F-Zero X. You press A, and then you actually have some additional things that you can do as well. Look at the ROM information, configure the ROM, hex view, and cheats. Cheats are essentially going to be your Game Shark thing, so you could plug in Game Shark codes to basically change things within the game itself, which is, of course, a whole situation in and of itself, how much stuff you can actually do with that sort of thing. So you start up the game and it starts up exactly how it should. That's kind of the beauty of FPGA stuff, is that it plays exactly like it should play, it looks exactly like it should look, and it performs exactly how it should perform. Now, you're not going to get all the bells and whistles of things like internal upscaling like you get with emulation and stuff like that, but still, like, I think this is a great thing to have, and as you can see here, you know, F-Zero looks and plays exactly how it should. And that's really the most important thing with this. It's very fast to boot things up as well. So just awesome stuff here. But like I said, there is more that you can actually do with this, and that's where we get into the hack and homebrew section of this device, because you have multiple different things that you can access within this as well. So you have N64, which was an arcade thing that utilized an N64 backing in order to play the games. This was only in Japan, and most of the games, such as like Star Soldier, did have a Nintendo 64 port. But, you know, it's cool to have these on here, and the fact that they are preloaded onto this micro SD card is definitely awesome. And then you have hacks, and this is a section that I have been spending so much time in because there are so many Nintendo 64 hacks out there that it can be very overwhelming to find them all and put them on a device. But with this micro SD card that I purchased, they've already done this for me. You could see a whole bunch of cool stuff on here. Banjo-Kazooie hacks, Doom hacks, GoldenEye hacks. I've actually been playing Goldfinger 64, which is a complete reimagining of GoldenEye on the N64, but with Goldfinger. It's actually really fun. That second level when you're in a hotel is just absolutely awesome. I really love it, actually. But you can see here, you know, Legend of Zelda hacks, Mario Kart hacks, all sorts of fun stuff. And since this is a micro SD card, if you have stuff on here that you maybe want to play that might not be on here, or newer hacks and stuff like that, you can always add stuff. You can see here that I've added some of my favorite hacks from the Nintendo 64 when it comes to wrestling stuff. And of course, since they are based on Nintendo 64 games and don't use any additional high resolution textures or anything like that, I could play these right on my N64. Everything works and functions and looks exactly how it should. And like, this is just so awesome. It's so fun to feel like a new N64 wrestling game playing on the N64. And they all run and look absolutely brilliant, exactly how they should. There's no sort of graphical errors or sound errors or anything like that. I absolutely love this portion of it. You also have some homebrew applications, not too many things within here, but I mean, it's cool to see. You also have translated ROMs, which is super awesome because, you know, some of these are very text heavy games. And then you have Nintendo 64 DD, which might be one of my favorite sections as well of this, because I've never played anything 64 DD related, and the fact that you can actually play 64 DD games without having the 64 DD, because I don't know if you've taken a look at the marketplace for the Nintendo 64 DD right now, but it is absolutely ridiculously expensive. And yeah, you know, some of these games, you know, there is a lot of Japanese stuff in here, but look, I'm playing Mario Paint. And, you know, if this came out stateside, I would have played this to death. Like, I love the original Mario Paint on Super Nintendo. So being able to make my own little artwork, such as John Sucks, because Spawn Wave does suck, I think is super cool. And having the whole 64DD library is awesome. Like, it's just so much fun to tinker around. And yeah, it didn't have a huge library of games or anything like that, but the fact that, you know, this is somewhat in English, so it's easy to figure out and easy to navigate. You got character this is such a cool game. Maybe one day I'll have to do like a full video on this, because I love this game. Like, I want to play this game for hours and hours and hours. But we can't do that because, yes, we've gone over the N64 games. We've gone over N64 ROM hacks and beta versions and all sorts of fun stuff. But there's even more you can do with this system. Now, I clearly started out in this section of the folders because I wanted to save something very cool for last, and that is emulation. Yes, folks, you can actually run emulators on your Nintendo 64, and this micro SD card does have Game Boy, Game Boy Color, NES, and Sega Game Gear on it. Super Nintendo is a bit newer, and that is something that I ended up adding into it. But you might be wondering how this is done as well. It's done the exact same way. You have the top 100 NES games via IGN. You have USA, you have Europe, you have Japan, hack and homebrew, best of, demos, hacks, homebrew, NSF to NES music. Like, the amount of stuff on here is absolutely insane, and this comes preloaded on here. Like, yeah, you could find all these NES ROMs and you could find all these dumps and buy a micro SD card and put them on here, but why not just do this? Now, how does the emulation function? I'm sure is a question that you probably have. That's actually going to be for a different video. I know I'm a stinker, but I will show you just a little something playing on here with Super Mario Brothers. We'll keep it simple, but you could see, like, you know, this is obviously a very easy game to run, but this is NES playing on your Nintendo 64, already preloaded onto our EverDrive thanks to our micro SD cartridge. And then, of course, we have to take a look at Game Boy, and once again, same sort of thing. USA, Europe, Japan, hacks and homebrew, translations, all sorts of cool stuff. And I'm sure you're wondering, how do the games look on here? Once again, we'll do a deep dive on this very, very soon on the channel, pending that this video does indeed do well. But I guess I can give you guys a little sample here of Mortal Kombat 2 on the Game Boy for the N64. Like, think about that for a second. Imagine if back in the day, your N64 could play NES and Game Boy games. I think it would have sold even better, honestly. You know, put a cartridge slot on there or something. Like, it would have been super cool. But as you can see, it's running exactly how it did back on the Game Boy. And wait, what's that? Different features that you could do with this emulator? Oh, we'll have to save that for the next video. Game Boy Color is looking very similar as well with the folder structure. US, European, Japan, hacks and homebrew. And the Game Boy Color is an awesome system. I don't understand why people don't give this like more credit than they do, because this was a new system. Like, this is a system that has its own library of games, a large library of games that could only be played on the Game Boy Color. Yet people just act like, oh, you know, this is just a little revision. It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess it is a revision, but it's actually quite a good revision for the Game Boy. And you could see here, it boots right up. Tommy Tallarico Studios. I didn't even plan that. This is a game I used to play a lot sophomore year of high school. Ooh, that's some solid performance. And I'm using the analog stick as well. Interesting. And you also have Game Gear. Now, to be honest with you, the Game Gear performance, it's not great. There are audio issues with it. I don't know if the Game Gear emulator is still being worked on. If you keep the volume down a bit, and it does vary from game to game sometimes, but if you keep the volume down a bit, like, it's not terrible per se, but it's not great either. But being able to play, you know, Game Boy Master System games, like, this is just an added bonus to me. Like, I'm not expecting, you know, greatness out of this, but the fact that you can play on your N64 is pretty cool. And of course, there's Super Nintendo, but we'll save that for the next video. But yeah, like the EverDrive and this preloaded micro SD card really opens up the world of Nintendo 64 if you own an N64 system. Like, you could go for a complete collection. You could do all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to stop you. You could do whatever you want with your money. But for someone who's a bit more budget conscious, who loves their N64, wants to be able to play the N64 games, but doesn't want to fork out a ton of money to play them, this is a great way to have everything on here, plus 64DD, plus prototypes. And yeah, you don't have to get the micro SD card. You could spend your time getting all these games, adding them to a micro SD card and putting it on the system. But to me, time is money. And, you know, to spend, you know, what's a micro SD card cost anyways? You're going to have to buy the card. So you might as well get a little more bang for your buck, spend a little bit more money, but have access to everything right off the jump. So this is my thoughts on the EverDrive plus the micro SD card. There will be links in the description box down below, Amazon affiliate links. If you want to pick those up, I will get a little bit of money if you decide to buy them as well. But hey, you might as well use my link instead of, you know, not using it. Let me know in the comment section down below, though. Are you a believer in the EverDrive? Because you should be. This thing is awesome, and every Nintendo 64 owner needs to buy one of these. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit that bell notification as well. There will be more N64 content coming up soon. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Later.